Okay, boys, today we've got a list of so-called leaked exotic catalysts or data mine catalysts. Again, before we get into this, like we've said in previous videos when it pertains to leaked information or data mined information, things are always subject to change. Not only are they subject to change, like we saw with previous exotic catalysts, things like Fighting Lion, Suros, Rat King, those catalysts took many months after they were data mined to finally actually show up in the game. But it is speculated that a handful of these exotic catalysts will be dropping on us next week with the Solstice event. Now again, completely speculation, but let's just get in here and take a look at everything because they look pretty nasty. First up, we have the Malfeasance exotic catalyst, Big Boom. Defeating an enemy with explosive shadow causes a final explosion. Now on Malfeasance itself, there's the exotic perk Explosive Shadow. Shoot tainted slugs that burrow into an enemy. Stacking enough slugs causes them all to explode. So the slugs themselves explode, of course. I think it's like 5 that you have to stack on an enemy, and of course it does bonus damage against taken enemies and gambit invaders. But with a perk name like Big Boom, I'm assuming that the explosion that you get from Explosive Shadow when stacking those slugs is gonna have to be monumental. But again, guys, this is not actually adding damage to the weapon itself. It's just adding that AoE explosion upon defeating that enemy. So you're really not gonna get the benefits of this exotic catalyst on the front end. It's more or less on the tail end and for enemies that are grouped together. Hopefully though, the explosion is big enough to justify this exotic catalyst. Moving on, we have the Ace of Spades exotic catalyst, Funeral Pyre. Firefly deals more damage while Memento Mori is active. Now again, for Ace of Spades, it has the exotic perk Memento Mori. Reloading after a kill loads magazine with a few extra damage bullets. But also it has the trait Firefly, which of course increases reload speed here and causes target to explode on precision kills. What this exotic catalyst is essentially going to be able to do is it will scale with the increased damage of Memento Mori. Now how much it does, I have no idea. We'll just have to get in there and check it out. No lie, one of the best weapons in terms of explosions is Sunshot. So I'm curious to know if Ace of Spades with the exotic catalyst Funeral Pyre could rival something like Sunshot. But at the same time, man, I wish Sunshot got a buff, right? Like I just wanted to get a magazine increase. Give us 10 rounds at least, maybe even 11. You would see so many more people using Sunshot. Now our next one is of course for Last Word, or what we assume to be for Last Word, High Noon. Now this has been in the database for like ever. Was discovered actually last year, but readying this weapon grants a brief period of bonus precision damage. Now a reason why everyone thought that this was probably gonna be the exotic catalyst for Last Word, originally, like back in year 1 of D1, the Last Word perk stated that you got bonus damage and stability, but you also received extra precision damage when firing from the hip. Now again though, this perk that was data mined did not specify whether or not we got that bonus precision damage from the hip or while aiming down sights, or even if it even matters. It just stated that while readying this weapon, you will be granted that brief period of bonus damage. Now, me personally, I would prefer that this bonus precision damage would require Last Word to be shot from the hip, considering that's like its whole identity to begin with. Now, our next exotic catalyst, and I don't think it's the exotic catalyst, but yes, it was data mined, the Survivor. 3 rapid precision kills while Roadborn is active will return 2 rounds to the chamber. Now the reason why we don't think this is the exotic catalyst, back in D1, Chaperone also came with the Survivor perk and it stated the exact same thing. And I'm not really sure how data mining works. Like, do they share the same database, Destiny 1 and Destiny 2? I don't think so. Boy, would that be confusing. We do know for sure that Chaperone does have an exotic catalyst that's supposed to be coming at some point, and technically the Survivor trait is not present on Chaperone. So if they wanted to just go in there and slap that perk on there, I guess they could, and of course that would actually make it a much better weapon than it already is for both PvE and for PvP. Now, moving on, we have a speculated exotic catalyst for Black Talon. Vorpal weapon. It states right here, increased damage against bosses, vehicles, and guardians with their super active. Now, the reason why we think this is for Black Talon, Vorpal blade or Vorpal weapon here is related to blades. It means sharp or deadly, and so essentially being related to swords, words, a lot of people are thinking this is the Black Talon catalyst. Now, currently the catalyst right now for Black Talon is just showing a magazine increase, but it's definitely not unlikely for an exotic catalyst to also give you both a stat boost and a whole trait. Now, the Black Talon exotic perk is Crow's Wings, which allows you to fire off projectiles. I like it. It's a fun sword, but if there is anything that this exotic needs, it definitely needs an increase in damage, especially when it comes to taking down guardians with their supers. Now, the next few things we're about to be going over are nothing that specifically points to an exotic catalyst, but they are new traits and perks found in the database. Now, some of us are speculating that it could be applied to certain exotics as a catalyst. The rest of us think that it could just be perks for either the next set of Pinnacle weapons, or it could just be outright new perks coming in Shadowkeep. Now, the first one is Fistfuls of Bullets. Melee kills overload the magazine to double its capacity. So essentially like a much better version of Grave Robber. Now, this could be applied to an exotic, but I don't really know what exotic it could be applied to. Some state that it could be part of Monte Carlo, considering that the Monte Carlo perk does revolve around our melee. If that was like a new and improved Monte Carlo though, where not only do you reduce your melee cooldown while getting kills with Monte, but simultaneously when getting a melee kill off, you double your magazine capacity. Yeah, it could be nasty, boys. But again, it could very well just be either a completely new trait coming in Shadowkeep or just one of the new Pinnacle weapon perks. Now, next up is Once More. Reloading increases this weapon's damage if you hit with at least half the rounds in the magazine, but fail to kill anything. Now, this is actually an interesting trait because, you know, most of our traits right now require you to either get a kill first before ever taking advantage of an increase there in damage. This, however, seems to be more pointed toward when you're trying to melt a boss or something that's taking a lot of damage, but each time you reload, you now get an increase in weapon damage. Now, there's really only one weapon that I know of off the top of my head that has a difficult time in landing all of its precision shots, which might pose a challenge for this weapon, but would greatly benefit from a weapon bonus damage. And to me, that is Cerberus +1. So with Cerberus +1, and you think about it, as long as you're landing at least half of your shots as precision shots, each time you reload, you'll get a bonus there in weapon damage. So it could definitely be it. Now, the exotic catalyst for Cerberus, at least in terms of stat boosts, we are getting a +20 bump there in stability, but we're also getting a +30 there in reload speed. So it's gonna have a really fast reload speed, and hopefully this perk right here is gonna tie into that. Now, again, completely speculated. Once More could definitely just be something present on like LMGs, auto rifles, SMGs, but I can definitely see this perk on a lot of different weapon types. Now, moving on to our next perk, Hellstorm. Kills increases weapons damage and begin to steadily reload the magazine from reserves until you stop firing. Sounds like a perk I wish would have been on like Sweet Business, right? A lot of people are speculating that Hellstorm will be present on some sort of automatic weapon. Some are saying it could go on our fast rate of fire pulse rifles. I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I'm not even gonna take a stab at this one. I have no idea. It can go either on a fast rate of fire weapon, but it could easily go on some of our more slower firing archetypes, as it states that it will steadily reload the magazine. Now, what steadily may mean, I don't know. I mean, it could be like 1-2 bullets here and there, or it could just be laying it on you. I don't know. So again, I'm not even gonna take a stab at this one. Now, a final trait that was pointed out in the database is this classified trait right here. It does not have a description, nor do we see anything about it other than just being able to see what it looks like. To me, it reminded me of Headseeker, but instead of just the one target, it shows like 3. Notice that? So maybe it's a perk that increases precision damage based on hitting multiple targets. That's my best guess. I don't know anything outside of that. Maybe it only increases precision damage, you know what I mean? Now, the last trait that was found in the database is called Focus Optics. Increase zoom and effective range when aiming down sights. Now, that sounds just like rangefinder, outside of the increased projectile velocity that you gain with rocket launchers and grenade launchers, but everything else, zoom magnification, effective range while aiming the weapon, Focus Optics, I mean, it just sounds so similar to something like rangefinder that it makes me think this may just be a trait that gets added as an exotic catalyst to certain weapons. instead of just Bungie saying, hey, here's rangefinder. Instead, they'll be like, oh, here's focus optics. Now, just because it does sound like rangefinder doesn't necessarily mean it behaves the same way. Again, the zoom magnification from rangefinder could be completely different than what focus optics gives. So it could just be an improved perk over rangefinder. Having increased zoom for certain weapons is beneficial, but at the same time, having too much zoom could throw you off mid-gunfight, especially if you're in close quarter combat. So that would be like the pros and cons between this trait and something like rangefinder. Well guys, those are your exotic catalysts and perks that have been data mined. Again, who knows when these things will actually hit the game. We have the Summer Solstice event happening next Tuesday, and with it, it's speculated we should be getting like a Solar Week at some point, which is essentially like Arc Week, but instead of a buff to Arc subclasses, it'll be a buff to our Solar subclasses. Hopefully, in the midst of all those things that are going on, we'll actually start to see some of these exotic catalysts trickling in. Well, fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.